Kia ora e tiwi and welcome to The Chew, coming at you from the studios here in Kāmuriwai, Arrowtown. Ko Arrowtown Dad tēnei, and today we are chewing the fat with a good friend of ours, Clare Rapata. Kia ora, Clare.
Kia ora e hoa.
Right, so first things first, I'll get you to introduce yourself in whatever way you want to, and then we're going to talk a little bit about where you were born and where you grew up.
Okay, I am, ko Clare toko ingoa. I am from the UK originally and have been in Queenstown or Tahuna for 11 years.
11, wow.
Yeah, and I currently work as a graphic designer, but I'm about to go and study.
Yes, you are. Now, we're going to get onto that a little bit later, but for now, you mentioned you were born in the UK.
Yep.
Yeah, and you're from a quaint little, is it little, the town of, or the city of Chester?
It's technically a city, but it is small. In the UK, you can be a city, you are a city if you have a cathedral, rather than by population size.
A what? A cathedral?
Yes, a cathedral. So our little city is a very old Roman town, but actually before that it was an indigenous settlement going back much, much further. And it has a cathedral that's over 1,000 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, so that makes it a city, but actually it has a wall around it. It's a walled city, like a fortified city, which is actually quite small, of only about a mile or so, I think, to walk around the wall.
There's a wall around the whole city?
Yes.
To this day?
To this day, yeah. It was Roman and then Saxons built on top of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a lot of sort of Viking-y type history?
Yes, pretty much everybody. It's always been a really good stronghold because it's in the northwest corner, York in the northeast corner, London in the southeast corner, and Bristol in the southwest corner. So the four form a kind of rectangle, which is the four corners of England. Really? So they were the strongholds. Whoever came in, they were always going to be the four places that controlled the main areas of the country and the main roads and routes for food and everything else. Yeah,
this is quite fascinating. So I'm going to ask another question. Is Chester, has that always been the name, or was there like an older name for it?
Deva, or Deva. It might actually be Deva. D-E-V-A.
D-E-V-A.
Yeah. Is the old Roman name.
But
it probably had a name, an indigenous name before that, and I don't actually know what that is.
Excuse my ignorance here, but when you say indigenous, who were the indigenous peoples?
Ancient Britons. Yeah, so the ones that came before the Vikings, before the Saxons.
Right.
So the kind of early, very early settlers who would have lived in shacks and campfires and kind of talking like 5,000 years ago.
Wow.
So the early people, yeah.
Wow. I could probably just have a whole podcast just on this subject.
Yeah, to be honest. I wish I knew more to tell you as well.
And so you did all your schooling in Chester?
I did, yes. In and around Chester. I went to art college when I was 16, left school because they asked me what I wanted to do, and I said art. And then they told me about the local art college, and I went and signed up, and then went back to them and said, this is what I'm doing. And they said, but we didn't realise you were going to get good grades. We want you to stay at school for 2 more years. And
wow.
I'd been to the art college. I was off.
Wow.
There's nothing. I did no need to stay at school. So, and that was great. And it actually skipped me ahead a year. So when I went to university, I didn't have to do usually in the UK, you have to do a foundation year of art before you can go to uni. But because I'd done the 2-year course, I didn't have to do that.
That was the same thing.
Yeah.
So was the art school in Chester?
The art school was in Chester, and then my university was in Plymouth.
Plymouth?
Yeah, which is southwest.
Oh, okay. How far from Chester?
Oh,
a long way.
I don't know in miles. A few hours.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay. Hours. So not within your home boundary.
No,
kind of
not
thing.
at all. Yeah.
And so growing up, would you say you had a typical British upbringing?
I guess at the time I thought so, but I didn't know any different because every kid thinks that their life is typical. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess so. There were definitely things that we did that other families did. There was a pattern to life, to going to school, to coming home, to doing your homework.
Yeah.
You know.
Did you play much sport?
I did athletics as a teenager.
Really?
And I played soccer after that. I liked playing soccer as well.
Soccer?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. You called it soccer.
Only for our Kiwi audience.
Only because you're in New Zealand. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, but I did kayaking as well, and on the rivers. And this was more teenage, not so much when I was really young.
Yeah.
I did do horse riding when I was really young.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which I enjoyed, but I don't think I showed my commitment enough for my parents to continue paying for it. So
Fair enough.
I was quite happy doing art stuff, so it was much cheaper for me to sit and play with pencils and drawings and sketches. And in the garden, I was always in the garden. And again, another free hobby. So
obviously art, you latched onto the art thing early?
Very early. Yeah, I just always loved it, yeah.
And so you do graphic design now, so obviously you've sort of held on to that interest.
I have, and after the 2 years at art college, you kind of had to think about which direction to go with it. And again, in the UK, to be an actual kind of artist is not particularly easy, and it usually comes with money behind you and a name behind you to go to the right colleges and the right backing to actually make something of that.
Okay.
Not everybody, obviously Banksy's become a real big
name.
But that was how it seemed at the time, to do anything traditional, so I didn't really want to do that. And so I went more into media and animation and film, and actually went to university to do that, and kind of found my way back through into graphic design over the years. Following that. So
your degree, you mentioned it touched on other aspects of media. It's not just
graphic design. Absolutely. So animation as well.
Really?
I loved doing animation. Yeah, the actual old-fashioned stop frame.
Oh wow!
The kind of models through, actually model, move it a fraction, take another picture, move it a fraction, take another picture. But I loved doing that. I thought it was really cool, and at the time it was actually quite innovative and new and. So that was something I really enjoyed, and we did a lot of multimedia stuff as well. I was lucky enough to catch the tail end of the actual film industry before everything became digital. So I learned how to edit actual tape, analog sound, and that was fascinating. Because
it's like they would physically cut.
Yeah, you physically cut it and put it together, and so I was very lucky to catch that because it really wasn't around for very long afterwards.
No.
So we did that as well, and a bit of multimedia with music and editing, and so very mixed. Yeah.
Would you say that you've left all the other digital media behind and you're just focused on the graphic design side of it?
Really, although I still love taking photographs, and I love to paint, but I just haven't done it in a while because life has been busy.
Yeah.
And I think over the course of a career, you do end up focusing more in one particular area. And graphic design is a very career focused area to go into, lots of opportunities, and the more you go, the more you develop and you hone your skills in that area. So I have focused more in that. I did work in the film industry for a little while when I first came out of university.
In England?
Yeah, very poorly paid.
I bet.
There are some companies that didn't even pay. They expected you to volunteer your time. But I did discover that the editing, which I really loved, actually generally involved 12 or 13 hours a day in a dark room with no windows, having to do what somebody else said, how you should put something together. And I guess until you get to the top of your game, because I do have friends that from uni who are still doing that now, you have a long way to go till you get to a point where you can be the one
part of the
calling
creative,
those shots.
Right.
And I just found that actually all that time in a dark room wasn't, much as I love the creativity, it wasn't really what I wanted to do. And so I ended up coming through fashion, video games, publishing, taking those kind of graphic skills and applying them to different industries along my career.
Wow. So a lot of people who may already know you from the region, they probably have met you through your health and wellness stuff and your meditation.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting to find another side to you that people may not know about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, after uni, did you spend much time within the industry? It sounds as if you maybe caught a few jobs within the film industry.
Yeah, just one main company that I was at, a company called Soho Images, who at the time were post-production company, and they were doing all the editing for Locked, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember all those guys coming in to watch the edited version, and
really?
It was quite a big thing. Yeah, that was a big one for us to do.
Yeah.
And I also remember working in the library aspect for live archiving, and actually working with these old reels, these big metal cans of old reels of old BBC footage and stuff from 1900, like 1900 and whatever, really early film footage and stuff that had to be handled quite carefully, and that was quite a privilege to have to be able to do that. But after a couple of years, it was like, right, now I need to do something a bit more.
Okay.
And
which was?
So then I ended up working in fashion. So it was partly as well because I was working two jobs, because I was working in a bar as well, which was great, but also I was like, I could really do with just doing one job and slightly higher salary.
Yeah.
And I ended up working for, quite by accident, through a temping agency, ended up at a fashion company.
Wow.
Essentially as a kind of a PA, but then it wasn't long that I started getting into more creative stuff with it. I wasn't designing fashion. I was starting on more admin, working with the factories, understanding fabrics, starting to work with the designers, and then working with the actual the shops as well, so our actual clients, managing kind of portfolios and stuff as well. So I kind of and then from there went to work for Lacoste years later in
Lacoste.
For footwear. And we did that's where things started to get a lot more creative, and I started coming back in with the graphics and the marketing, and also packaging, which is something I've always really enjoyed, and you can be very creative with that. And they were being very innovative at the time, which was great, and there was a lot of opportunity to start getting more creative.
So was that more, what would you call it? Working in an advertising space?
No, we were really working with our distributors, but they were around the world, but they were really looking to create something different. They didn't want to be just another sports brand. They wanted to be a heritage brand, but they were looking to have some high-end, cutting edge stuff, which was more not catwalk but equivalent of something that was much more designer. And so we started looking at they called it the strategic trend department. So we were looking at stuff that was innovative in the packaging space, innovative in the way we presented it. We were we weren't doing the selling, but we were looking to get our distributors in each country to kind of buy into the idea of, this is a lifestyle that comes with this product. This is, if you're the person that buys these shoes at this price, then this is what you're doing with your time. This is who you are. This is what it says about you. Right. So I learned a lot at that job, and I did love being there. I was there for quite a long time. So I went to New York with that job. We did a big launch in New York, and
Nice.
So there was a lot around, again, the marketing, the graphics and stuff that all started to come back in and started to direct me more back in that direction again through that job.
Into the graphic design direction?
Yeah, just because in developing product like that, those elements are really important, and kind of took me back in that direction. Yeah. Nice.
And so I'm gonna jump along a little bit here, but I'd be interested to know, what was how did you make the decision to come to New Zealand, or was New Zealand just the final step on a different journey?
No, it was it was a really interesting step. So after fashion, I'd worked in video games for a while.
Nice.
Or in between that, actually, I worked in publishing. So actually but like gift books. So very illustrated, lots of putting book layouts and things together, which was great. But then I'd gone into video games, and it was a startup company, and it was just hitting a point where actually there were a lot of startup companies. Facebook games had just kind of started. People were playing a lot of things on their games. So it was that whole industry, and they were a company that had a lot of money behind them, a lot of friends at Adobe. Almost definitely too many cooks in the kitchen. There were too many managers, all with great ideas, but too many ideas.
Right.
And so I'd been there a year or so, really loved it. There was only 2 of us doing the actual graphics, and then a bunch of developers who were all the loveliest kind of geeky boys who lived with their mums, and it was just we all got on really well. It was a really nice environment, and we built Lego on our desks, and it was
oh my god,
it was real techie. It was but it was great, and I absolutely loved it. And but after a year or so, you could kind of tell the writing was on the wall that it wasn't going to take off as a startup. It needed probably more time.
Right.
And so I already knew that things probably weren't long time going to last at that company.
How could you tell? Like what sort of...
I think really that I think one of the main ones was you would go into a meeting, or you'd prepare stuff for a meeting, and then you'd read the notes afterwards. And everybody you knew had their thing that they wanted to say, or their idea that they were bringing to the table, because the people working there had come from big industries. There was one of the guys there was from the company that made Little Big Planet, which was a huge hit in the UK. So they were people that really knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
But what you saw happening was everyone went in and everyone said their piece, and everyone left thinking that what they had said was what everyone was going to go with. But when that's 10 people who all think that their direction is the one that you're going in, and then they go to the next meeting and the same thing happens, you're not actually ever going anywhere. And you could just kind of see that's what was happening.
Right.
So we were doing so much work on all these pitches and everything else, but nothing was actually really coming of it. There was background money coming into the company, but we weren't actually going anywhere. So you could just kind of tell a little bit. So I actually, did leave not too long before I came to New Zealand. We decided, my ex-partner, he had always wanted to come here. We had been here on holiday and actually loved it here. So had kind of just said, you know what, it's so beautiful. It feels so amazing.
Yes.
It's a different way of life. It's not having to commute. I was doing 4 hours of commuting every day.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, so it was getting a bit much.
In London?
In London, and pretty expensive. So it was 2 hours in, work all
2
day.
hours?
2 hours back. And that was a train, then a smaller train, then a walk or a bus. So it was getting a little bit crazy, and that wasn't actually where the job was when I first started it. They relocated, which made it a lot further. I could have driven 45 minutes originally.
Right.
So it was that as well. There were quite a few things. So actually, kind of jumped ship when we decided, you know what, if we're meant to be in New Zealand, we love it. It's a different pace of life. It's not 4 hours of commuting every day, if that's what's meant to be.
Nice.
We'll let it be. And things, once we kind of made that decision, things moved quite quickly.
And was it a decision to just sort of, come here without any jobs in mind? Did you research any or apply for any jobs prior?
Yes. So part of what had happened is we'd been away for a weekend, and as we were driving back down the motorway, we saw a sign. I think we'd seen a sign, and we'd pulled off for a shop, and there was a thing had come up about an immigration seminar that was happening that day at like 12 o'clock at a hotel.
Wow.
So we just went in and had a look and read all the stuff, and they kind of that particular agency, they don't take you on if they're not like 98% sure that they can successfully get you here. Yeah. And part of their company was an employment to recruitment agency as well. So they kind of, yes, you have to pay for it, but they do everything.
Right.
And from the beginning, you're either going to be a go or you're not.
Yeah, right.
And so we kind of talked it through with them, and it looked like we had a good chance of finding something here. So we'd actually applied for residency before we even left the UK.
Oh, okay.
And I had my job at my old company, which was Holmes at the time, before I left as well. So I had 2 Skype interviews from the UK.
You applied for residency?
Yeah, immediately, as soon as I had the job.
Oh, right.
So I knew I had the job.
Yeah. And so the company that you got the job with,
Yeah.
it wasn't like a sponsorship deal or anything.
No, because it was slightly different
Right.
then. The whole sponsorship thing wasn't set up the way it is now.
Yeah.
So as long as you kind of had that kind of job guarantee, you could apply.
Oh, really?
And that it was a long-term kind of permanent job. And I was there for 7 years in the
Yeah.
end. So,
but I mean, how long from the time that you applied, how long until you got approval for your residency?
well, in theory, it should have gone through quite quickly. And the only reason it didn't was because just as we were in the middle of applying, they gave the go-ahead for the kind of 30,000 tradies they'd been looking for to rebuild Christchurch.
Right.
All to go ahead at that time. So all of a sudden, my application or our applications were caught up in the middle of all these other applications.
And so you got prioritised down the list.
So it slowed it down a little bit. So they ended up
right.
doing us a kind of little temporary visa just to bridge the gap. But I think within 6 months of us applying, within 3 months of us being here, we got our residency. Yeah, because it wasn't based on
the point system.
On the sponsorship, it was a point system. So we already knew we reached all the points.
Yeah, right.
So,
right.
And actually it was me, my ex was on a partnership, but it was me, we came off of my career and qualifications because everything lined up to be better points.
Oh, for you.
For me. Yeah, so we came via me.
Funny.
So we already knew that we qualified for everything of how it was set up at the time.
Oh, so as a couple,
yeah,
you're weighted on one of your points, not...
Yes, they only do it off one and they call it a partnership visa. So just one of you has to qualify and then the other one. So I think a lot of that's probably changed now.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I've got no idea.
Yeah.
It's an interesting discussion for me because, obviously I'm not a migrant in my own countries, but I'm always interested in how it works for other people. Yeah. So you came here, and you already had been here on holiday anyway, right? So you had some idea of what New Zealand was.
We had some idea, yeah.
Yeah. And did you come straight to Queenstown at that point?
Yes, absolutely. So I already had the job. They were desperate, but, well, don't want to say desperate. The person prior to me had already left.
Yeah.
So they really needed someone to come in. And
where was that?
And so that's at Holmes Real Estate.
Holmes
so doing
Real
graphic
Estate.
design for them.
Oh, you worked for them?
I worked for them for 7 years because they became colliers. But they were Holmes when I first started. Quite a little family kind of feel company at the time. And we landed on the Sunday.
Yeah.
And I started work on the Monday.
You're joking.
Yeah. So, and we were staying up at Alpine Retreat because one of the real estate agents had on their property like a second property that we could. So we stayed up there for 3 months until we found somewhere to live. Yeah.
Jeez, you landed on your feet, didn't you?
We were lucky. It was a nice place.
Yeah. And so, a quick question for you: what, if anything at all, was the biggest culture shock for you first coming to New Zealand? Was there a culture shock at all?
I think possibly actually within real estate, which I hadn't worked in before.
Yeah.
Because having those skills, they're quite transferable industry to industry. So it was a new industry for me. But working for a company that was actually quite relaxed.
Right.
Like that, because none of them came out of real estate. All the owners of that company they were rafting guides and that kind of thing. So all of them had been in tourism, and I think maybe, and I hope they forgive me for saying this, but it got to a point where they're like, well, maybe we need to grow up and get a proper job. And so they started a real estate company, and they knew a lot of people and very well liked for being that kind of family friendly people, faces that were recognisable.
So just to clarify, so this is Holmes, New Zealand.
Yeah.
Were they a focus on commercial property, or was it
residential?
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Residential, very Queenstown, residential, family.
Right.
Orientated. So it was a very nice company to come to. But I think seeing people walk into the office with bags of cash to purchase property back in the day, in the early days, they're not allowed to do that now. That kind of thing was interesting for me. That was a new thing.
I think it'd be interesting for anyone, to be fair. I don't...
I think also learning that how Queenstown was back in the day, And when there was a big boom in housing here, and a lot of things were, you know, a box of beers and that kind of thing, which I wasn't used to coming from the UK. And it's actually quite nice.
Yeah.
But of course, a lot has changed now with rules and things that they can't be like that. But I really like that friendly, you know.
So would this been around 2012-ish?
2013. So,
yeah. Ah, okay. So, and did you have trouble kind of fitting into the local community at all, or was it,
I found it quite hard back then, actually, to start with. It was everything that you saw anywhere. This was before there was quite a lot of social media around Queenstown as well. So a lot of what you saw was in Lakes Weekly Bulletin or on a billboard somewhere.
Yeah, of course it was.
And most stuff that you could find about Queenstown was all aimed at tourists. And it was very hard to find stuff that was aimed at kind of local community.
Yeah.
It took a while, but there were two things that I'd seen popping up, and one was kind of volunteering for, you know, fire service, Coast Guard, those kind of things. That popped up quite a lot. And the other one was meditation. I had seen that there was some meditation on a Yoga Nadi, and been quite keen to go to that class for a while, but I gave myself a chance to settle in a bit first. And doing that one in particular was my kind of first entrance into actually connecting with community, and I kind of never looked back after that.
So good segue into your sort of mental health and well-being sort of journey, the whole meditation side.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about how you got started on the meditation.
Yeah, well, I guess I was already doing a little bit back in the UK. For myself, just my own journey. Things had kind of started happening that I needed answers to. And that was with regard to seeing things, hearing things, you know, waking up in the middle of the night and seeing someone walk across the room, that kind of thing. And I was like, actually, I need to start getting some answers here. I need to start learning, because not that those things hadn't happened before, but there was like an acceleration. And I was like, right, I need to start learning. So I'd started getting into meditation as part of that journey of looking for answers and starting to learn. And that was investigating all sorts of different things, from kind of First Nations culture in America. That was a huge thing that I had a lot of interest in, but also Viking culture.
Of course.
Crystals, runestones, which is part of the Viking culture thing, oracle cards, all sorts of tarot cards. But none of it at the same time, and I didn't really realise to start with that those things all connected.
Okay.
I didn't really understand really about energy or anything like that. Coming from the UK, that really it was the whole ghosts thing that I understood, and all the rest of the stuff came when I got to New Zealand. So I was already a little bit on that path anyway.
Yeah.
But then when I found the meditation, that was great. And I met a lot of people, like-minded people that I'm still friends with today.
Yeah.
Through that. And that kind of evolved and grew. And eventually at some point, I can't remember when the first one was, but someone asked me to do a meditation, to kind of run one. And I did. And to start with, I would print ones out off the internet, and then I would sit there, I'd have days I'd sit there and one would just come to me, and I'd kind of have that kind of download of what I could say, and I started writing those up. And eventually I would just trust that if I sit down and close my eyes, it's going to be there for me, and
Stuff would come to you.
And it would all come, and I'd just say the words, and that's where I got to eventually. But it came from helping out, kind of doing ones for friends, to my friend Todd, who was running meditations at the Sherwood at the time. I started standing in for him when he was on holiday, and he was doing some training himself on his own journey, and eventually he decided he was going to go away for a year and do training, so he asked me if I would run those.
So that's how you ended up.
So that's how I ended up doing those. Right. So, and then I met Jess and started doing some at Frankton Library as well. So that was several years of doing those meditations, which I absolutely have loved, and introduced me to such a huge amount of the community. People I still see today that know me from there, and I like to think I've done some good, but it's been a huge journey for me as well, and I learned a lot.
Oh, nice. Yeah, you are well regarded in the community for the work you do in that meditation space, and just well-being in general. Now, somewhere along the line, along in your journey, you decided to learn te reo Māori.
I did.
Yeah. So tell us about how that sort of came about.
Okay, so that was quite early on.
Yeah.
I hadn't been here that long, and it had been in the back of my mind mostly because I couldn't pronounce place names. Some might say I still can't. But
No,
coming
you're much
from
better. much better.
having grown up, because my dad's side of the family are Welsh, my mum's side are English, and having grown up on the border of Wales and having heard a lot of people pronounce Welsh place names very badly, it was probably something that did kind of twinge with me, and I was like, I'm not happy about this in myself, that I can't do this. So that was my initial kind of thoughts on it. And then my physio at the time, I got a frozen shoulder, and I'd gone to a physio that had been recommended, and he'd said, and this was Sam Frankham. And he said, I'm starting a te reo class next week.
Was that from Sam?
Yeah,
was it?
so he told me all about it. So then I went and looked it up and thought, I hope this isn't too creepy. But kind of signed on to the same class because I didn't know about it. And I didn't know that SIT were doing the classes because it had been in my mind, but I hadn't really explored it.
Yeah.
And then that was that.
Yeah, right. You were, I believe, were you in Caroline's year one class?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how we all met, right?
It is,
Yeah, it was through there. And then you followed on the very next year and you did level 3, 4 after that. So I think, and at this point, we got to know each other.
Yes,
right?
definitely.
So probably in the first year, actually, is we also, around the same time, for those of you not familiar, we also created a local Waiata group. Yeah. And Claire was one of our founding members, I like to call us. We've had that friendship for a while now, well, since those days. Yeah. And now I'm going to skip along a little bit as well. So last year, so you had quite a gap between when your level 3, 4 finished. Yeah. It was quite a few years ago. Yeah. And last year. Yeah. You did level 5.
I did half of level 5.
Oh yeah, that's right. You did half a year, which is you did a fantastic job anyway.
And I will finish it one day.
Yeah. Well, you had a lot of external pressures that you were dealing with.
Lots going on, but also I really realised that I could sit there and I could learn academically and pass the things that were needed academically on paper. I'm quite good at answering things on paper at the moment, but I realised that didn't sit well with me because actually I couldn't kōrero the way I wanted to. My pronunciation was still not 100%, not that it'll ever be 100%, but it could have been a lot better. But I was still struggling to have conversation, and I just felt like it would be a little bit fake to push on through and get a qualification for something that I didn't actually feel like I genuinely was qualified for. And I was like, no, what I actually need to do is I need to step back. I need to speak. I need to find ways to learn, to listen, to speak, and then come back in and do this when I feel like I genuinely can I'm ready and I can attain those grades, those passes, because I feel it with my whole being, not just because I'm ticking a box on a piece of paper. Oh,
that's very idealistic of you.
I know it is.
But you did a fantastic job. For those of you who didn't know this, who are listening at the moment and watching, I was the kaiako for that year, so I do take some blame for not helping Claire get right through to the end. But to be fair, Claire, you had a lot of external pressures and other things going on in life that made it difficult for you to finish that year. So totally understand that. And I hope one day you'll come back to it, and maybe one day I'll go back to teaching it.
Absolutely. I will not be getting married again. So that was a big one that's required my attention, and very well worth it was. So.
Now, speaking of marriage, so you've been an integral part of our Waiata group that we created for the local community. The majority, pretty much, actually all of us, we all came from that Māori language journey. I remember when we first started the Waiata group here. So, new question for you. So you are somewhat freshly married, or
yes, coming up on
new to
1
marriage.
year.
Yes. So tell us all how you and HUD met.
Okay, so we met at Waiata.
Oh, did you?
We did at
Good
Kelly's
segue
house. Yeah. Although actually we met at your birthday.
Oh,
we didn't remember that we met at your birthday until afterwards, when we did both manage to put 2 and 2 together. But no, we met at Waiata Group. I came in. I was a little bit late. Everyone was already kind of singing.
Had a skinful.
So yes.
Yeah.
I squeezed in at the back and next to HUD and Charlie, and I hadn't met HUD before, and he introduced himself and I introduced myself, and he didn't have a songbook because it was only his second time.
The old I didn't have a songbook, eh? Nice one, HUD.
Yeah, so and I just enjoyed being next to him, and after a while, and we kind of all shuffled around and changed, and I kind of stayed next to him, and then we shared a songbook, and and then as I was leaving that day, I just turned around to I didn't get to see him to say goodbye because he'd gone to talk to somebody else, and I just turned around to wave goodbye, see if he was looking.
Yeah.
And he turned around and waved at me, and
he was looking.
That was it. Yeah, we knew.
Yeah. So there was a bit of a spark first time?
Absolutely.
Yeah, nice. Oh, that's so good. And now, fast forward along.
Yeah.
So, not long after you sort of got together, I guess, as a couple. And almost a year ago now.
Yes.
You were married.
We were.
Yes.
Yeah, out at Mavora, Hikurangi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Hikurangi. Yes.
Yeah.
I remember that. Great wedding. It was a fantastic time. My first time out there in Mavora Lakes. So, and, it was so I was personally so happy that all of our little community family, we all went out there to support you both.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was really
so
quite incredible.
Oh, nice. Now I'm going to skip along a little bit in the story, although it all kind of links together, right?
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do now is just touch on what your immediate future plans are.
Yeah.
And it's probably easier to describe what both of your journeys, both yours and HUD's journeys, are, what HUD is currently on and what you are about to embark on.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now HUD is up in Otaki at Te Wananga o Rokawa, and he has just started a full immersion Te Reo course. And is absolutely loving it.
Cool.
And I am going up there next Friday to join him, and I am starting a whakairo course, which is, as you know, carving. My course started online, which was at least gave me the opportunity to tie up a few things here and to finish work, and so
wow,
very excited. Very excited about
and
going
so
up there.
the great news for us here in this community is that you're not gone for good, right?
No, absolutely not. Our whakairo is to go, to learn, to completely immerse ourselves, which is why I'm not I'm choosing to be a poor student rather than do any work up there. So completely putting that to one side so we can completely immerse ourselves in Te Ao Māori and learn everything we can learn so that we bring it back for our whānau and for our community.
Fantastic. Are you nervous?
Not nervous. No, not too nervous, because I really am going in. Although I obviously have learned what I've learned, there's a whole world that I don't know. So I am going in. I'm preparing myself as much as possible. So not nervous, but definitely going in humble and empty, ready, empty vessel, ready to be filled with the learning.
Great.
So, kind of not too nervous. I think there is a component of te reo on my course, and I
Yeah.
think when we have the full immersion bits on that, I'm going to find it hard, challenging maybe. But that's okay, because that's how I will take that leap forward in learning that I've been needing.
So I somewhat disagree that you will find it difficult, and I'm not saying that the elements of it won't be difficult, because I think it will, but I think you probably have a bit of an advantage compared to maybe some of the people that who will be your fellow classmates, because you have had a good 6 months of being within an immersive environment.
Yes.
In your level 5.
I've had a good teacher. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, well, I mean, you know, being within an immersive environment, immersive Māori language environment, if you have never done that at all, that is quite a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
And so this is why I don't think it's going to be too difficult for you or too much of a shock for you, because you've at least had a taste of that.
Yeah.
And you may find that there's people within your class that have never had that experience before, despite the fact that they're probably Māori as well.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's probably worth me mentioning something, right? So you were going into a full year course at Otaki, the highly regarded Te Wānanga Raukawa, to learn carving, traditional Māori carving. Now, I don't mean to be this guy, but you are a non-Māori female going into something of a very male traditional space.
I'm very aware.
Yeah. So I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's not like having few non-Māori females in that kind of a space. While it is different and strange, it is not unwanted. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there, you know, we encourage in Te Ao Māori, we encourage people who are non-Māori to come in and, you know, at least be a part of the journey, be a part of.
Absolutely. And I'm finding that, especially from what I'm understanding at Te Wānanga Raukawa, is it is, and obviously typical of Te Ao Māori in general, is that open arms, that welcoming, you know, bring your baby, bring your friend, you know, everybody is welcome as long as your intention is good and your heart is good. Then come along. And I find that so beautiful and so heartwarming and touching, and it is a privilege. It's an absolute privilege, and I'm not the first to do it, but I do think it is really wonderful that we are now having Tane going to weaving, and you know that I can go and learn carving, because it is very tapu, it's very special, and I will be learning a lot. It's almost the carving is the end part of the journey. I'll be learning a lot about whakapapa, a lot about pūrākau and the stories, the patterns, everything that you create is to create something very, very special, to create a tonga to bring back to your family or your community, which has all of that weaved into it. So it's a very wairua space as well. So it kind of brings in my spiritual side in a different way. And my creative side to combine together. That when you're working with wood, you're also then working with the trees themselves and and with Papatuanuku, and so it really does combine everything that I'm interested in and everything that's in my heart all in one space. And it's just the most incredible honor, and I think if I wasn't supposed to be there, I wouldn't have been accepted on that course. So I take that with the privilege that it is, that it's something special, and it's for me to make the most of that. Yeah.
And, you know, I think from my own personal and selfish perspective, I think you're the perfect person to represent the non-Māori, non-male perspective non-New Zealand perspective.
Yeah.
Like, because you will, having known you for a few years now, I know that you are always going into a space with your heart open, without any preconceived notions. More importantly, without the arrogance of thinking you know things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
But,
so I know you're going there, and you're going to sit in your own whakaiti and just learn, and be part of something that I get the feeling it's something that it's the right time for you to.
It is
get
the right
into.
time. It's absolutely the right time, and I know I will spend those spare days where the carving shed is open.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to be spending my days in there. I'm going to be learning, trying, honing my skills, getting better. And it's only 1 year, but the journey I'm going to go on within that time, and it really is time. It's time to bring all those elements of my life together. I've had this great career, but I've pretty much done everything I can do in terms of learning on that journey, and now it's time to do something that is more focused on family, more focused on community, something that really is my kind of passion, rather than, it's nice if your passion and career can be together, but this takes things into a different level, because I really went into things like graphic design. When I followed that route, it was, this is how I could see that you could do art and make money and have a living from it. But now I see that, you know what, there's other ways, and it doesn't have to look like the way that we're brought up to think things should look like. You don't have to struggle to survive. You just adapt your situation. And Hud and I are not the most conventional people, and
Brilliant.
We're going to be in the camper van, and we're going to be loving it, because we love the camper van, and we're just going to adapt so that these things that are so important to us are the number one thing, and we work the rest of life around our passion rather than it being the last thing on the list, which it ends up being for so many people, and I've been one of those.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting now that you're a brave soul, because if you just think about making the move from Chester to New Zealand, takes bravery alone. Moving into, a cultural and indigenous space that's not familiar to you is a brave thing to do. Yeah. Moving into the same world where it is it's more stereotypical of a male Māori, you just, and that's another level of bravery again. And then the final level of bravery is you're going to be living with your husband, but away from the community that you've built all your connections,
absolutely,
into a completely different area of New Zealand that you've never lived in before. So I'm like, at some point, I'm thinking, is there anything you're not willing to give a crack?
Bungee jump, definitely a bungee jump.
I'll take the bungee jump.
I've jumped out of a plane, but I'm not doing a bungee jump.
Oh, that's funny. I've done a bungee jump. Oh my God, worst idea I ever had.
Yeah, not for me, thank you.
Yeah, not for me either. Not anymore. So, we've spoken a lot about your journey, but the whole, the moving up to Otaki, it's not just you alone, right?
No.
So Hud's up there.
Yep.
And he's doing a full immersive year of learning Te Reo Māori as well.
Yeah.
So I think, you're both lucky that you have each other to support each other up there. So you're not going up alone. Yeah. And, while we're going to miss you here, we understand that you both have to go on this journey. You just, at our age, you kind of go, sometimes the directions you go don't have to make sense.
Absolutely.
They're just the directions that you feel are right at the time. Yeah. So, we're gonna miss you, both of you guys, down here in the local community. But you'll be back.
We will absolutely be back
by the end of the year.
We will be back. And I think I'd just add one thing before we probably finish up. Yeah. And that was really that it is quite poignant for me, because I lost my very best friend from art college from when I was 16 this week. She actually passed a few weeks ago, but I found out from her sister this week. We have stayed in touch over the years, and she meant a lot to me. We were absolutely inseparable in art college, and it is no surprise to me that I've found out just as I'm about to embark on actually the same level of education, but going back to do kind of immersive and art form, albeit immersed in a completely different culture.
Yeah.
But it's almost like starting it again, taking two again, and I know she's going to be with me on that journey the whole way. So it's been a very special week in that respect. And so lots of special memories from last time I was at college, and now going back to do it again and with her in mind.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So something quite special.
Oh, that's great. I'm sorry to hear about that, but I guess hopefully that gives you some inspiration for your next steps up.
It really does, and it just brings it home, all the things everyone says, follow your dreams, follow your passion, follow your bliss.
Yeah.
Don't keep making excuses because you just never know.
Yeah, and you don't want to have regrets.
You don't want to have regrets, and things can change overnight.
Yeah, absolutely.
So don't leave it.
Yeah. So that segues quite nicely into something that I usually ask everybody. I should change the question, but I'm not going to. So just one quick fire question for you. If you could go back in time to 18-year-old Clare and give her some advice, what would that advice be?
Much as I tend to think I would never change a thing because I wouldn't be who I was today if I did that. But I think I would go back and say, don't feel that you have to be constrained by what society teaches you have to be. Don't listen to those limitations, because actually anyone can be anything and do anything. You just got to have the heart and trust that you can actually go out there, and once you start taking those first steps, things will unfold for you. Right. So don't be constrained. Don't hold back. Live this life.
Yeah. Lovely. This always allows me to ask a follow-up question. And is that because you felt that pressure, or you felt that requirement to conform back when you were younger?
I think so, and it wasn't coming from parents or anything like that. I didn't have, my parents weren't together. I didn't have much parentage in my life. It was really just me. But it was more just not having that life knowledge to know, or anyone to be a mentor or anything to actually say to me, actually, there's a whole world out there. Actually, have you thought of this? You could try that. Have you explored this? Have you thought of going overseas? All of these different things, whereas you felt like you had to kind of find your way, and your way needed to be 9 till 5, and you had to almost follow this prescripted route because you didn't know any different.
Yeah.
And doesn't have to be that way.
It's an interesting piece of advice, because from the outside looking in and listening to your journey, it doesn't look like you suffered from that kind of conformity requirement.
Only in that I have sat in an office for a very long time.
Right.
And that has brought me a lot of very good things, and I don't have any ill will on that, but I haven't followed my passions as soon in my life as I would have liked to have done.
Okay, got it.
So
that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of us could probably really heed that advice. Yeah. There's always people who feel like they're stuck in a rut and they can't get out of it. And
one day when I've got time, I'll pick up a paintbrush again when I've got time. But actually, right now I've got life, and that's too. That's enough. I'm exhausted, kind of thing. And also getting exhausted doing. I'm not someone who does a job halfway, so I put everything into my work, and that is tiring. So, and it's not that I wouldn't put anything into anything else, but when it's your something that makes your heart sing, you're energized regardless of the fact that you are working hard.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. And so you built or bought a house in Athol.
Yes.
Yeah. So you will be renting a house out in the meantime, right?
Yes, that is rented out to tenants right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's always good that you've got that safe space to come back to, because
Yes.
as you know, there's a lot of financial pressures on people living in this region. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I guess you're fortunate in that you don't have those worries to.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I feel confident that you're both coming back.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. The house will be there. It's, yeah, definitely coming back. We love our whare aroha.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much. And beautiful garden. And I know my tenants have been enjoying the potatoes and the berries. And they did give me a call the other day to ask if they could drop some berries off to me, because they've got so many.
Really?
And would I like some to take on my journey?
Oh,
Which was very kind of them. So
that's nice.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and our friends are here.
Yes.
And our family
Yes.
is here, aside from my family in the UK.
Yeah.
And so this will always be somewhere that we will come back to.
Right. And you haven't convinced your sister or your mum to come over?
Not at this point in time. My mum looks after my nan, who
Oh,
will be
yes, your
100
nan.
this year.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Oh, go Nan.
yeah. And my sister has quite focused on my niece at the moment, who is 4. In fact, last year she picked out her 4th birthday card for herself in the shop and told my sister, this is the card I want for my 4th birthday. So I was like, she's going to be interesting. She's one to watch, that's for sure.
Nice.
Yeah, so they have a lot going on with schooling and things right now, but maybe one day. Maybe one day.
We could use more of Clare's blood stock in New Zealand for sure. So going back to Athol, you love living there?
Yeah, I do love living there. It's a little cut off from services, or a little remote from people, which is plus and minus.
Because it's about an hour's drive.
It is about
Queenstown?
an hour from Queenstown, central Queenstown. Yeah, it's lovely that it just feels so different in northern Southland. It has its own kind of energy. It's very tranquil, peaceful. You wake up to bird song. You don't hear any cars. You've got a nice, for the same money as in Queenstown, but you have this huge garden, and you can really get to the earth. And I love trees, and I've got loads of trees at the back. I get my hands in the dirt, and it's a very nice little community, very small community, but it's we do look out for each other. So all those things that we absolutely love, the days that had sat on the veranda singing songs, singing waiata, and the sun shining, cup of coffee. There's some really beautiful things about being down there, but at the same time we are a little cut off from just being able to, we can go to the river and jump in the river, which is also another awesome thing to do, but we are just that we're away from any major centre. So for spending time with friends, coming to Waiata, learning things, it's just been a little bit difficult. But we do have the camper van now, which will make things a bit more flexible. So we'll see how that goes in the future. But yes, I highly recommend living in Athol, to be honest. So,
nice.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to leave it.
Yeah.
Do you have any last thoughts, any last comments before we sign off?
Well, I hope by the time I come back, when we can do another one of these, and maybe a few more words in Te Reo Māori.
Yes, I'd love that. I'd love to find out how your whole journey went. So I'll look forward to interviewing both of you actually when you get back.
That would be really nice.
And see how your progress went.
Yeah.
Great. Nō reira, e mihi atu nei ki a koe e te rangatira e te maraikora no Ingarangi, e mihi ana. And to you all listening on the Chew, if you have any questions, if you have any comments to make, pop them down in the chat box below. Remember to like this and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time on The Chew. Mā te wā.
Mā te wā.